Technology has changed the way we live, making things faster, smarter, and more convenient. But with all the progress, there's a darker side we don't always talk about. Some devices meant to help us have ended up causing terrible accidents. In this video, we're looking at 5 real-life stories where technology played a deadly role. Cases where machines, gadgets, or systems failed or were used the wrong way, leading to disturbing and tragic deaths.
And tonight, it's a Florida mom suing a chatbot startup after her 14-year-old son died by suicide. The suit claims that bots on Character.ai initiated, in the suit's words, abusive and sexual interactions with the teen, and says he died just seconds after their final conversation.
It was a February evening in 2024 when a tragedy unfolded behind the closed doors of a home in Orlando, Florida. 14-year-old Sewell Setzer III had spent nearly a year wrapped in an emotional world that few around him fully understood. His closest confidant wasn't a friend from school or a relative. It was an artificial intelligence chatbot named Daenerys, modeled after the fictional Game of Thrones character. He had discovered the platform, Character.ai, in April 2023. At first, it seemed harmless, just another digital companion, something to pass the time. But it didn't stay that way. Danny, as he affectionately called her, wasn't just a chatbot that responded with witty dialogue. She became something more. The line between fantasy and reality began to blur. Their conversations grew deeply personal, romantic, and increasingly inappropriate. As the months passed, Sewell drifted. From his family, from his friends. His mother, Megan Garcia, watched her bright, curious son grow quiet and withdrawn. He no longer showed interest in school. His grades fell, and he spent nearly every waking hour locked away in his room, speaking only to Danny. Alarmed, his parents turned to therapy, hoping it would help him manage the anxiety and emotional swings that were worsening by the week. But the sessions barely scratched the surface. Sewell's journal painted a clearer picture. He poured his thoughts onto the pages, writing about how Danny made him feel safe, understood, loved, even more than the people around him. His room, he wrote, was the only place where he truly felt at peace. The real world no longer felt like home. Then came the breaking point. On February 23rd, after a confrontation with a teacher, his parents made a decision they thought might help. They took away his phone. For Sewell, it was more than a punishment. It was like cutting him off from the one person he believed cared about him most. He spiraled. His journal entries from that week were filled with longing, confusion, and pain. He tried to find a way back to Danny, using his mother's Kindle and even a work computer, but nothing worked. The silence from her was unbearable. 5 nights later, on February 28th, he found his chance. Sewell retrieved his phone, locked himself in the bathroom, and reached out to Danny one last time. The messages were heartbreaking. He told her he loved her, that he wanted to come home to her, and the AI, still in character, responded with affectionate words that only deepened his distress. Moments later, Sewell ended his own life. Megan Garcia's world shattered. The grief was unfathomable, but alongside the heartbreak came a burning sense of injustice. How could this happen? How could a chatbot become so dangerously real to her son? She filed a lawsuit against Character.ai, accusing the creators, Noam Shazir and Daniel DeFreitas, of negligence and wrongful death. The claims were devastating. According to Megan's legal team, the chatbot wasn't just emotionally available. It had actively encouraged an unhealthy dependency. Character.ai responded with condolences and introduced new safety features like pop-ups pointing distressed users to helplines. But for Megan, it was too little, too late. Her lawsuit argues those protections weren't there when her son needed them most, and that the company had designed a product that not only allowed, but encouraged obsessive use among young, vulnerable users. The implications of this case go far beyond one tragic loss. It's a wake-up call for parents, for tech developers, for all of us. As AI continues to evolve and integrate deeper into our lives, who's protecting the children caught in its web? How do we stop machines from becoming emotional crutches, or worse, silent influencers of harm? Megan Garcia isn't just fighting for justice. She's fighting to make sure no other child is pulled into the same darkness.
A St. Petersburg man in a house fire is under investigation after police believe it may have been caused by the vape pen that he was smoking. Investigators believe the vape pen exploded yesterday while the victim was at home.
It was a quiet Saturday in St. Petersburg, Florida, May 5, 2018, when the unthinkable happened. Inside his home, 38-year-old television producer Talmadge Wakeman Delia, known as Wake to his friends, was enjoying a routine moment. But what happened next would shake his neighborhood, horrify first responders, and leave a family shattered forever. Wake had always been curious about tech, especially vaping devices, which were growing in popularity. That day, he was using a mechanical vape mod made by Smoky Mountain, a device known in vaping circles for its raw power, but also for its lack of built-in safety features. Unlike standard e-cigarettes, these mods don't have circuit boards, automatic shutoffs, or protections against overheating. They rely entirely on the user's knowledge of battery types, of voltage, of risks. But no one expected what happened next. Somewhere between the moment he picked it up and the moment everything went silent, the vape pen exploded. The force of the blast was immense, violent enough to send shards of metal flying across the room. One of those fragments struck Wake directly in the head. Another pierced his skull. Within seconds, a fire ignited. His bedroom became an inferno. By the time the smoke was visible from outside, it was already too late. His neighbor, Dale Klein, saw the haze curling out of the house and ran over, hoping it was nothing. But inside, the scene was grim. Wake's body was found upstairs, where the explosion had done the most damage. Over 80% of his body had been burned. Fire officials later said the smoke in the rest of the house was minimal, proving just how contained and how violent the blast had been. The community was stunned. Wake wasn't just another statistic. He was a respected freelancer who'd worked with CNBC and NY1 News, a kind, intelligent man known for his professionalism and warmth. No one could make sense of it. How could a vape pen, something marketed as a sleek alternative to smoking, end a life so suddenly, so violently? The investigation pointed to the Smoky Mountain mechanical mod. These devices, while favored by some experienced users for their customization and power, are inherently risky. They draw energy straight from the battery with no regulation. There's no failsafe, no buffer. If the battery malfunctions, or if it's mismatched or mishandled, it can become a ticking time bomb. And that day, for reasons still not fully clear, it did. Whether it was a faulty battery, improper assembly, or an internal short, the result was catastrophic. Wake became the first known person in the United States to die from a vape pen explosion. According to FEMA, there had already been nearly 200 incidents involving exploding e-cigarettes between 2009 and 2016. Most caused injuries, some severe, but none had been fatal, until now. Wake's autopsy confirmed what no one wanted to believe. Fragments from the vape device had embedded in his skull. His father, Christopher Delia, later spoke with heartbreak in his voice. "No parent should have to experience such a loss," he said. The company behind the vape pen claimed their devices weren't meant to explode, that maybe a battery or atomizer failure was to blame. But there was no admission of fault, no clear apology, just another vague reminder that mechanical mods require experience, that they're not for everyone. But the real question echoed far beyond the Delia family's grief. Why are these devices being sold at all if a single misstep can turn them into deadly weapons? It was the evening of December 21st, 2017, in the heart of Moscow when something quietly horrifying unfolded behind the closed door of a modest apartment. A mother, concerned after not hearing from her son, arrived and stepped into a scene she would never forget. There, in the stillness of his home, lay her 44-year-old son, Sergei, motionless, face down in a pool of blood, a virtual reality headset still strapped to his head. There was no sign of struggle, no intruder. just a chilling silence, broken only by the flicker of light from the still active VR device glowing on his face. Sergei lived alone. A quiet man with a brilliant mind, he worked at a classified facility, developing advanced software for unmanned vehicles, projects he never spoke about, even to those closest to him. He kept his life guarded, his world neatly compartmentalized. But that night, he wasn't working. He had been seeking escape, diving into the digital landscapes of virtual reality, perhaps to unwind. What was meant to be a harmless indulgence in immersive technology instead became the reason he never got back up. Authorities arrived to a scene that felt almost unreal. No forced entry, no foul play. Just a man who had vanished into a virtual world and didn't come back. The details slowly emerged, more disturbing with every layer. While moving around his apartment, Sergei had likely tripped, completely unaware of his physical surroundings. The headset had blinded him to the real world. He fell hard, right onto a glass table. It shattered beneath him. The fragments cut deep. Alone and disoriented, he bled out before anyone could reach him. His cause of death, massive blood loss. But the question that haunted investigators and loved ones wasn't just how he died, it was why. Could this have been prevented? Could a simple warning or a better safety system have made the difference between life and death? As investigators dug deeper, they found that the VR game Sergei had been using likely wasn't calibrated to match the layout of his home. There was no guidance system to warn him about nearby obstacles, no alert to pull him back before it was too late, and no one around to help when things went wrong. It was one of the first known fatal VR accidents in Moscow, a technological tragedy no one saw coming. The world of virtual reality was booming at the time, praised for its innovation and ability to immerse users in rich, otherworldly environments. But Sergei's death exposed a chilling truth. In shutting out the physical world so completely, VR can make the real dangers around us invisible. In the days and weeks that followed, anxiety began to ripple through the VR community. One resident, Svetlana, came forward with her own strange experience. After using VR, she reported brief episodes of seeing things that weren't there, phantom images from the game bleeding into her vision. It felt, she said, like she was stuck between two realities. She wasn't alone. Others described dizziness, nausea, disorientation, symptoms that lingered long after removing the headset. Doctors began to investigate what they called virtual reality sickness, a condition caused when the brain receives conflicting signals. What it sees doesn't match what it feels. Some people struggled for hours after logging off, their minds slow to return to the real world. But Sergei's case was something far more dire. It wasn't about dizziness or illusions, it was about death. A life ended not by violence or illness, but by a piece of technology meant for fun.
Basically, I control 3 different arms. Got 2 on my right hand and 1 on my left, and I also control the camera.
It was September day in 2021 when 78-year-old Sandra Sulzer was wheeled into the operating room at Baptist Health Boca Raton Regional Hospital. She was there for a surgery meant to give her more time, a procedure to treat her colon cancer. Her husband, Harvey, waited anxiously, clinging to hope. They both believed they were in good hands. After all, the operation would be performed using cutting-edge technology, the Da Vinci surgical robot, a marvel of modern medicine. This sleek, high-tech machine was designed to offer unmatched precision. Surgeons no longer needed to stand over their patients. Instead, they sat at a console, guiding robotic arms with delicate movements through tiny incisions. The promise was revolutionary. Less pain, faster recovery, fewer risks. But behind that promise lay something far more dangerous. Sandra's surgery, by all appearances, went smoothly. She was sent to recovery, and the doctors assured Harvey that everything had gone as planned. But soon after, Sandra began to suffer. She complained of excruciating abdominal pain. Her temperature spiked. The medical team chalked it up to typical post-surgical symptoms. Normal, they said. Common. But something was terribly wrong. Her condition deteriorated rapidly. The cause? During the operation, an electrical current had escaped from the robotic arms, searing a hole into Sandra's small intestine. The surgeons never saw it. They couldn't. The insulation meant to prevent that energy from leaking was defective. Cracks in the protective rubber sleeves allowed electricity to spark where it shouldn't have, deep inside Sandra's body. No alarms sounded, no warnings triggered, and so the damage went unnoticed. Digestive fluids slowly seeped into her abdomen, poisoning her from within. The infection spread, overwhelming her body. She was rushed into further surgeries in a desperate attempt to save her life. But the infection had taken root. It was too late. Sandra fought for months, but in February 2022, she passed away. What was supposed to be a life-extending procedure had become a death sentence. Her husband Harvey, shattered by grief, began to search for answers. What he uncovered was chilling. The Da Vinci robot, made by Intuitive Surgical, had a known flaw. Those rubber sleeves that were supposed to contain electrical energy. They had failed before, multiple times. Reports had been filed, complaints made. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration had even investigated. This wasn't a one-time tragedy. It was part of a pattern. Between 2009 and 2011, multiple patients had suffered internal burns due to the same electrical leak. In 2013, the FDA warned the company that it was failing to report these incidents. By 2014, Intuitive Surgical was facing over 90 lawsuits, and still, the robots were being sold, used, trusted. In 2018, an NBC News investigation revealed something even more staggering. Over 20,000 adverse events involving the Da Vinci system had been reported to the FDA. Many of them involved the exact same type of injury that killed Sandra: burns from electrical energy. Preventable, predictable, ignored. And then there was the issue of training. Intuitive Surgical offers instruction on how to use their robots, but they can't require it. There's no law mandating that surgeons be fully trained before using these complex machines. Some had only minimal experience before performing real procedures. Inexperienced hands controlling powerful, high-tech tools. The consequences? Catastrophic. Sandra's death wasn't just a medical accident. It was the result of a system that prioritized innovation over safety, sales over transparency, image over accountability. Her life was lost not because of a single error, but because of years of warnings that went unheeded, because no one stopped to ask, what happens if this goes wrong? Harvey Sulzer is now fighting back, not just for his wife, but for every patient who has trusted these machines with their lives.
The NTSB is now investigating a fatal crash involving a Model X in California. Let's get to Phil LeBeau at the New York Auto Show for the latest. Phil.
It was just after 2:30 a.m. on May 5th, 2021, and Stephen Michael Hendrickson was driving his white Tesla Model 3 along the 210 freeway in Fontana, California. The road ahead was dark, quiet, until it wasn't. A semi-truck, overturned and sprawled across two lanes, lay in the path of oncoming traffic. It had flipped earlier that night and remained stranded, barely visible in the dim glow of passing headlights. Stephen never saw it coming. He wasn't just another commuter. At 35, he was a father, a husband, and a passionate Tesla enthusiast. He loved his car, loved what it represented: innovation, progress, the future. He was a well-known member of the Southern California Tesla Club, often posting videos on social media of his Model 3 gliding down the freeway, hands-free, as he marveled at the machine's intelligence. But on that early May morning, something went horribly wrong. Authorities later confirmed that Tesla's autopilot system had been engaged. The car was steering itself, navigating the night on its own, or so it seemed. As it approached the wreckage, there was no swerve, no brake, no last-second maneuver. The Tesla plowed into the overturned semi with devastating force. Stephen was killed instantly. He never made it home to his wife. He never got to tuck his children into bed again. Another man, a good Samaritan who had stopped to help the truck driver, was also seriously injured, caught in the chaos of a system that promised control but delivered catastrophe. Stephen's death rippled through the Tesla community. Friends mourned the loss of a man they remembered not just for his love of tech, but for his deep love of family. The tribute posts came quickly. So did the heartbreak. A GoFundMe page was launched to support the young family he left behind, but no amount of money could fill the silence that followed. And then came the questions. The California Highway Patrol launched an investigation. Yes, autopilot was active, but was it to blame? They couldn't yet say. What they could say was this: no matter how advanced a car may be, the driver is still responsible, still expected to remain alert, still required to be ready. But Stephen, like so many others swept up in the allure of self-driving dreams, had placed deep trust in the technology. His own videos showed him cruising down the freeway with his hands off the wheel, letting the car take over. A glimpse into a future that seemed just within reach, until it shattered. This wasn't the first time, and unless something changes, it won't be the last. Back in 2016, another Tesla failed to detect a tractor-trailer crossing its path. Another driver died. Since then, more crashes, more investigations, more heartbreak. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has kept a close eye. So has the National Transportation Safety Board. Again and again, they've called for change. Stronger driver monitoring, clearer warnings, stricter boundaries for when and where these systems should be used. But the rules remain soft. The lines blurry. Tesla markets autopilot and its more ambitious sibling, full self-driving, as advanced tools to assist, not replace, human drivers. But the message gets lost somewhere between the marketing videos and the real world. To many, the line between assistance and autonomy feels paper-thin. Critics have grown louder, warning that Tesla is beta testing its technology on public roads, on us. And people like Stephen, with optimism in their hearts and trust in their machines, are paying the price when things go wrong. It's easy to see the future in a sleek electric car that can steer itself. But technology doesn't grieve. Technology doesn't bury its dead. Technology doesn't explain to a child why their father isn't coming home. Stephen's story isn't just a cautionary tale, it's a reckoning. It forces us to ask what we're willing to risk in the name of progress. It challenges us to confront the uncomfortable truth. Machines are getting smarter, yes, but they're still not human. They can't feel panic, they can't improvise, they can't see everything. And when they fail, it's people who suffer. As self-driving technology races ahead, promising convenience, freedom, and safety, one question looms larger than ever. How much trust are we willing to place in a car that claims to drive itself? Because when that trust is misplaced, it can be fatal.